Good morning, class. Today we're going to do things a little bit differently. As you can tell, I am losing my voice. I'm a little under the weather today. So, in order for me to be able to explain to everybody our instructions for today, I am recording myself. I'm worried by the end of the day I won't have any voice at all. So, bear with me. And if you have questions today, you can definitely come up and talk to me. But a lot of questions can be answered by just watching this video again that's posted on our calendar. Okay, so the first thing that I want you to do today is get out the pre-writing that you started yesterday. Remember that everybody is receiving paper copies of the pre-writing. However, if you lose your paper copy for any reason, you can go to my calendar. On the calendar, if you click the link, it will take you to the website. And then the website looks like this, and you can pop out this PDF. And right here is where you can print extra copies in the library or at home if for some reason that you need another copy. Okay, so I want to talk really quickly just to remind you about what you did yesterday. That's something I'm going to be looking at for each of you today. Hopefully you've got that finished. The first thing that you did was decide what your claim was going to be. You looked back on your T-charts. Hopefully whatever you had the most evidence for is what you chose for your claim. The part that I really want to emphasize today is the step 2, where you're gathering support for your opinions. I worry maybe I wasn't very clear yesterday or there was a miscommunication, so I want to make sure that you know what is expected of you for this section. You'll notice that there are 3 points that you have to make here. These 3 different pieces of support represent the 3 body paragraphs that you are going to form on your essay. So, you want to make sure that each piece of support is dealing with something different. You're not going to want to put 3 pieces of support for how vaping is dangerous to your lungs because it's going to be really difficult for you to write 3 whole paragraphs about that one piece of support. Okay, so I would think of it as 3 topic sentences. You want those topic sentences to be broad. For example, if you are writing about how vaping is dangerous for your health, you might put one of your pieces of support, maybe this first one right here, being that vaping can be dangerous for your health because it is dangerous and it affects your lungs in a negative way. There are lots of things that you can say to support that broad statement. So within the paragraph that you were to write about lung health, you might include specific examples like the boy that it talked about in the Jewel article, that 18-year-old named Chance, who had that illness in his lungs where he had all the black spots because he had the pre-existing condition that vaping made a lot worse for him. Okay, you could go on to talk about the chemicals in vapes that hurt your lungs and so on and so forth. So remember that whatever you put in these 3 boxes or in these 3 lines, you need to make sure that you can add supporting details for those things. Be prepared to elaborate on each one of those things. They want to be 3 separate pieces of support. Okay, and if you need me to look at that for you so that you can make sure that you've done that, then I will be happy to do that for you today. Remember, you want to paraphrase. You don't want to take things word for word because that is plagiarism. Okay, so that might be something before you move on to our steps for today that you go back and you make sure that you've done. Remember, step 3, that counter argument, you are only answering one of these 2 sections here because you only have one claim that you are talking about in your paper. So you don't need to put a counter argument for both claims. Remember, the counter argument is their side of the story. So we talked about the argument that you might make for your mom to get you the new iPhone 11. when you're talking to your mom, you're going to tell her that you deserve that iPhone 11. You're going to give her reasons, but then you also have to acknowledge her side of the story. What might she say to argue with you about why you don't need an iPhone 11? Her counter argument might be that the iPhone 11 is too expensive. So when you're talking about the counter argument to your claim that you've made about vaping, you're going to want to acknowledge what the vaping companies might say in their defense to try to prove you wrong. If you say that vaping is dangerous, they might counteract you and say, well, vaping might be kind of dangerous, but it's a lot safer than other forms of smoking like cigarettes. That would be their argument. Even though there's lots of things that you could argue to make their argument sound weak, that's what they're going to say to defend themselves. Then, of course, the last part of what you were supposed to do yesterday was that rebuttal. In the rebuttal, you are going to counteract their argument. So you might say, I know that vaping companies think that smoking vapes are safer than smoking cigarettes. However, and then what comes next is your rebuttal. You might talk about, however, there are still many deaths, 26 deaths that have been associated with vaping so far. So that proves that even though it might be safer to an alternative, it's still really dangerous for your health. Okay, that's just an example. I would prefer that you come up with your own example there. All right, the next part, the new part for today is step 5. That's where you're going to write your hook for your entire article. That's where you're going to draw the audience in. You are not going to say, in this paper, I am going to talk to you about the dangers of vaping. Or in this paper, I am going to tell you about how vaping companies target teenagers. Do not start your essay that way, please. I've given you some examples of how you can start your essay. You can look at 1 through 4 here. You can start with an anecdote, which is a very short story. There are some examples of anecdotes in the article that you've read. I would prefer that you come up with your own anecdote. Now, I know that hopefully most of you don't have your own personal stories to share about vaping. Hopefully we've all made the choice not to do that. However, realistically, I know that not everyone has made that choice. You, as a middle school student, have probably heard stories that friends or acquaintances have told you about how maybe they have felt pressured to vape through social media or through other people, or maybe you've seen firsthand some of the dangerous effects that vaping might have. This is where you would tell that very short account of that story. You can tell a surprising fact. There are some in the story, and then I also am going to show you where you can find some additional resources that you might use for your surprising fact. A rhetorical question. Please don't just say, have you ever thought about vaping? I want you to put more thought into your rhetorical question, something that you really have to reflect upon, okay? Don't just choose the easy question here. Or you can use a quote, something that maybe somebody has said about vaping, and that would be something good to put here. Remember, your hook is going to be very short, and so you've got space to write that below. The next part is summarizing the issue. Please do not write a huge, long summary here. Please do not mention support here that you're also going to talk about later. You just need to talk about the issue at hand, which might be something along the lines of vaping is an epidemic for our country right now for teens, how vaping companies might say one thing about vaping. However, evidence will show that there are lots of negative effects to vaping. Or when you look at the evidence vaping companies use manipulative tactics to pull teenagers in. And you might give an example of that. You want to be very broad here. Your summary of the overall issue is only going to be maybe 2 sentences. It does not need to be something that's very lengthy. The next part is where you are going to restate the thesis. You chose one of these 2 claims for your introduction in your paper. In your conclusion, you need to make sure that you restate this thesis, this claim, but that you do it in different words. You don't want to say it exactly the same way that you said it in your introduction, okay? If you look at the front and back of your paper, you'll notice that's all that you have for today. You don't have any additional work. I do expect that you finish this either by the end of class today, but definitely by the beginning of class tomorrow. So this is homework for you if you are not finished by the end of your class time. Okay, so please remember that. When you come to class tomorrow, you won't come to class tomorrow, my 1st through 4th period classes, because you have the PSAT tomorrow. So please make sure that that you are done with it, because a lot of you I won't see again until we meet on Monday of next week. So if you have any questions, please come and ask me up at the front of the room, and I will try to help you the best that I can with the little voice that I have today. When you are finished with everything, if you finish early today, please work on Membeing. That's all I've got for you. So I hope that this was helpful, and let's get started.